Boker Tov, good morning. It's Friday, January 19th, 2018, and it's time for Stephen Bruck and you to share another Messianic moment. Hey, check out the shirt. I like this. And that's how I save the world. Yes, Yeshua. So, the ultimate superhero. So today we're talking about Parashah Bo, Goat, where God says to Moses, hey, go back. Pharaoh still doesn't get it. We've gone through 7 plagues already. Pharaoh's just not getting it. So Moses goes back and we read about the plagues. There's the plague of locusts and the plague of darkness, and finally the worst of all, the death of the firstborn. And Pharaoh is starting to kind of waver a little bit. Now remember, the priests have already been telling him for a couple of plagues now already. The priests have been saying, send them out, Pharaoh. We can't beat this. You're destroying Egypt, And I'm sure that the people wanted the Jews out. You know what? I'll bet the moment the Nile turned to blood, the people were like, that's good enough. You had me at the Nile turning to blood. I don't need it. I didn't need any of the other plagues. Could have gone then. And God actually, we read in this parsha how God turns the hearts of the people towards the Jews, and they give them presents and gifts. So the Jews didn't really loot Egypt as they left, although in the Torah it implies that. In the Chumash, it's explained in the commentary on this section that actually God saved the Egyptian people, because by giving these presents and gifts to the Jews, the Hebrew word used doesn't really seem to indicate looting as it's used later in the Torah. It indicates a gift, a friendship offering in a way. So anyway, and it's good because they needed all that stuff that they were going to get from the Egyptians as they left. They used it to build a sanctuary. So, God was planning ahead. He says when you leave, you're going to leave, and the Egyptians are going to give you all these good things because you're going to need it later. That brings up an interesting point. Can God really plan ahead? I mean, how can He plan ahead when He's already there? Can you plan ahead for something if you're already there? You're not planning, you're already in it. And in fact, since He's beyond what happens in the future, He's really looking at history. So how can I plan for something that's historically happened? Interesting thought. But we're not going to talk about that today. So, where were we? Right, back to the plagues. Locusts, 3 days of darkness, finally the death of the firstborn. So what has happened here has been that essentially God told the Jews, get your lambs, kill them, put the blood on the lintels and the doorposts, because that's going to be the sign for the angel of death when they come by. And at the Parsha, we read about that. We read about ends up with how to substitute the firstborn, because God killed all the Egyptian firstborn of children, humans, lambs, goats, sheep, whatever. Animals and humans, all firstborn were killed. And so, as the Jews are freed, God says, I took all the firstborn of Egypt, and now you are going to repay that by giving me all your firstborn, which eventually the Levites substitute for the firstborn of Israel. That's a little later, but we do hear about, God does say at this point that all the firstborn belong to me. So they're out, they're gone, and that's how this parsha ends, with God telling us, basically, Passover, gives us the rules for Passover. This is the new year. This is when your year starts, Passover. That's God's new year for the Jews, Passover. So, what do I want to talk about today? I want to talk about something that I've talked about before, I've written about it, and you know what? I'm going to talk about it again. Yeshua, Jesus, is called the Passover Lamb. He died right after the Passover Seder, and He's called the Passover Lamb. But He died for our sins. He died for our sins, which means that His death was a death for sin. It was a sin sacrifice. But the Passover Lamb is not a sin sacrifice. We eat the meat of the Passover Lamb. The only sacrifice where the person offering the sacrifice gets to eat of it is the thanksgiving or the friendship sacrifice. Leviticus chapters 1 through 7 explain it. In the middle of chapter 7, somewhere around verse 12 or 15, I'm not going to show you all the verses, you can look them up, is where we read about the thanksgiving sacrifice, and that's the one where the meat is eaten that day. In fact, I'm going to digress a little bit. Who me digress? How could that happen? To a story when I was visiting Shiloh. I know you think it's Shiloh, but in Hebrew it's pronounced Shiloh. Shiloh, the site of the sanctuary during the times of the judges, and up until David brought it into Jerusalem. The tour guide told us the story of how they knew when they were digging that site that they knew it was Shiloh. So the archaeologists are all digging around, they're coming up with all these things and everything. They have a low, high ground, a little lower ground in the area. If you've ever been there, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's the place where the tent was is actually a higher section, like on a mound. And the rabbi says, "So, Nu, what's happening? How's it going?" And the archaeologists are saying, "Well, it's kind of strange because we think that's the spot, but there are no relics anywhere there. We can't really find anything, but when we come down lower, all around it, we have all these broken plates and cups, all kinds of shards of eating utensils and everything. It's kind of weird because there's like tons of it." And the rabbi starts dancing around. He's dancing, and the archaeologists say, What's Machta? What's going on? Yeah. And the rabbi says, "You found it. You found Shiloh." And the reason he knew that they found it was because when you brought your sacrifice to Shiloh and you ate of it, the Passover sacrifice, the friendship sacrifice, and you ate of that meat, you didn't eat it right in front of the tent. You ate it around the tent. You came down off the tent, you sacrificed, you had the meat, you came, you cooked it, you ate it. But the meat was holy. And when the holy meat touched your plate, there was a transmittal of holiness to the plate. Now the plate is holy, and what are the regulations about holy plates? You broke the plate. You broke the cups. You broke the utensils that you used that had the holiness transmitted to them so that you wouldn't use them again and defame them. So that is how they knew it was Shiloh, because all of the broken cookware and plates that were surrounding where the tent was, where you brought your sacrifice, where the holiness was transmitted. Great story. So, back to the lamb. So Passover is a sacrifice of thanksgiving and friendship. And it makes sense, right? Because you put the blood over the lentil to say, "Hey, be my friend. Don't kill me. I want to live." That's the ultimate peace sacrifice is, please, give me peace of mind. Let me live. So, Yeshua, even though he died and was resurrected at the Passover time, and he's called the Passover Lamb, and in a way you could say that, right, because his sacrifice, which cleansed our sins, does bring us closer to God. I mean, that's how it worked. You sacrifice to cleanse yourself of your sin. You would then do a holy burnt offering to show your ongoing devotion, complete devotion to God, and then you'd have a peace offering, a thanksgiving offering, so that you could then share and commune with God, share a meal with God. And so he served that purpose. But the real purpose of Yeshua, when you think about it, was not the Passover lamb. It was the Yom Kippur Goat. Remember Yom Kippur, 2 goats. 2 of them, you lay your hands on the head of the one, confess the sins of the people, and Tzidkas, and get out of here, go away. And you kick them out into Atzazel in the land, whoever Atzazel is, who knows. And the other goat is sacrificed, and by his blood of the Yom Kippur Goat, we can have our sins erased. So Yeshua really, in a way, yes, he's the Passover lamb, but his sacrifice was really the Yom Kippur Goat. He brings them both together. You see, Yeshua ties everything together. And it makes sense when you think about the whole plan of salvation. Is man was built, there was no sin in the world, sin was introduced, now we have to get rid of sin. Yeshua gets rid of our sin, and by getting rid of the sin, ultimately we come back into that complete communion with God, which is the peace offering. So it all comes together through Yeshua, kind of reversed, in a way reversed, but then again, God can do that. So this is how I see, and I just got added here. Hello, say hello to Shadow. Hello, Shadow, say hello. Hello, everybody. Leave me alone, I'm a cat. So he just jumped up on my lap. So the sacrifice that Yeshua made was really a dual sacrifice, like the old Search commercials. You're not jumping up on my desk. Goodbye. It's like, you search, 2, boom, 2, boom, 2 mints in 1. Well, Yeshua, 2, boom, 2, boom, 2 sacrifices in 1. And so thank God for Yeshua, thank God for God, thank God for everything. And thank God to you for your sharing this with me. I pray that this helps you, that it edifies you. Please subscribe to my site, messianicmoment.com. Check out my books. If you like what you hear, share me out. Read the books. The way I write my books is the way I talk. So good for good or bad. So have a great weekend. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you again for listening. And I pray that everything goes well with you. Baruch Hashem.